All right. So, welcome everyone. I am Sheela Roth, Head of Clinical Education at Pearl. I am so thankful to be joined by Dr. Rubinstein and Hailey from our wonderful partnership with Curve. This is going to be an exciting webinar. Hacking dentistry, cybersecurity essentials for dentists. Those are the things that we don't want to worry about, and we want to worry about before it's time. So very concerning issues, but we're lucky to have Dr. Rubenstein walk us through lots of tips and tricks here. This webinar is designed really to kind of explore how tools like AI, cloud-based systems, analytics, and different techniques can help elevate practices, and also being mindful of how to mitigate any kind of exposure and risks. So, as dentistry continues to evolve at an unprecedented pace, many of us find ourselves wondering, how can we embrace innovation without compromising our patient's privacy or our patient's reputation? So that's exactly the question we're going to tackle today. I want to again thank everyone for joining us. And Hailey, if you'd like to say a quick hello from our Curve team, we'd love to have you introduce yourself, and then we will turn this over to Dr. Rubenstein.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Sheila. So my name is Hailey. I'm a product specialist here at Curve. We're just happy to be involved today, and thank you guys for having us.
Excellent. So we're going to be diving into all of these benefits and challenges that come with adopting this technology and workflows, especially when it comes to protecting sensitive patient data. To help us navigate this very crucial conversation, I am honored to introduce our speaker, Dr. Mitchell Rubinstein. He chairs the Technology Committee for the New York State Dental Association and helped co-author their HIPAA compliance course. So he knows this topic inside and out. He has served as the education director for the New York County Dental Society for about 5 years and is still deeply involved in ADA standards and committee for more information. He's teaching at a research facility and he's also in his practice. So very exciting to have him here. Whether you're curious about AI security risks or looking for real-world strategies to keep your data safe, just trying to figure out how to build patient trust, you came to the right place. So Dr. Rubenstein, we're excited to learn from you. We'll have you take it away.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share my screen now. Let's see. You tell me if
You're all set.
looking good?
Looking good.
Okay, terrific. Well, all right. Thank you, everybody. I'm really glad that you're all here. We spend a lot of time doing dentistry, and so sometimes we get tired of it and we don't take the time we need to go and educate ourselves on new stuff. I subject to that myself sometimes, so I applaud you all for tuning in when you could be doing something else. I think you're going to get a lot out of this, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. I know I'm going to enjoy it. So let's get started. We're going to talk about a lot of things that are misunderstood in dentistry. Specifically, today we're going to talk about cloud-based computing and artificial intelligence, some of the most important things that are happening not only in dentistry, but pretty much everywhere now. And there's an information revolution going on. And we want to be part of it, but we want to be part of it in a safe and productive and efficient way. So who am I and why should you listen to me about any of this stuff? I mean, Sheila just explained a little bit of what else I do, but I want to emphasize, for the most part, I'm a practicing dentist. I practice dentistry 4 days a week in my practice in New York City. I do some of these other things also. I chair the technology committee for the State Dental Association, and I'm on the standards committee for the ADA particularly. But I talk to a lot of dentists about things that they are going through with technology. And so I've learned some things by suffering through them the hard way myself, and some from other people's problems as well. So I'm going to share that with you a little bit today. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to the people at Pearl and at Curve. These are companies that I've been working with for a couple of years now. They are my own practice management and imaging people. And this was before I was lecturing with them. And they have no input whatsoever into the content of this program, but they are supporting it. And I have nothing but gratitude for them. So thank you very much. I do use these things running my practice, and you're going to see why in a minute. So it's the 21st century now. Actually, I got to qualify that because we're a quarter of the way through. It's 2025. It's the quarter of the way through the 21st century. It's a time of rapid technological change in dentistry. And I like to say that whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever kind of dentistry you do, everything is different in dentistry than when you graduated. And it doesn't matter if you graduated 3 years ago or 30, because things are changing so fast that you have to keep up, even if you're a recent graduate. Everything we work with now has a microprocessor in it and a screen. Almost everything we work with is connected in some manner to the internet. Uh, there's very little excuse now for losing track of information. The information that we have really should be available to us everywhere we need it and not available to people who shouldn't get their hands on it. That is something that we're approaching as being a real, possible outcome for us. All these things that we have now, I mean, we're using routinely things like CT scans. A lot of us are producing and milling our own restorations in our office, whether we're using different types of lasers, soft tissue lasers. You're going to see the common thread in these pictures I'm showing is there's screens everywhere. Even our microscopes are connected to computers so they can record the information for use later. Quietly, I like to say it's happened quietly over a period of time without a lot of fanfare. The basic nature of our practices, of our business as dentists has changed. And sometimes your elevator pitch, you're in an elevator and somebody says, hey, what do you do? What's your answer to that? What business are you in? Dentists will often say, oh, I'm in the tooth business, or I'm in the tooth fixing business, or I'm in the smile business, or I'm in the oral health business. But today, for real, and I want to change thinking on this a little bit, we're not, whatever it is, that's not all it is. You're not just in the tooth business. Okay, dentistry today, it's really an information business. And that's not just sort of a slogan like that. I mean, that's for real. Everything we do, it's the most valuable thing in our practices. The information that you have about your patients, about their care, about everything to do with how you take care of them, I call it those are the crown jewels of your practice. It's the only thing that's really irreplaceable. I mean, your lasers, your cone beam CT machines, they're all really expensive, but they can be replaced. The information, if you lose track of it, can't be. Okay, and whether you're interpreting an X-ray, whether you're educating your patient about something, communicating with a specialist, writing a prescription or a clinical note, the information is the important thing that you must keep track of if you're going to be able to properly take care of your patients. It's a common denominator. We need it in the right place at the right time. And there's so much of it, we need it sorted out for us because there's a huge volume of it. Having too much information is a problem also. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell a little story. I like stories. This is a campfire. Well, it's a video of a campfire. It's not a real campfire. About why exactly the information is so important. And I'm going to tell a story about something that we think about from the past, which is I'm going to air quote, the golden age of dentistry. That was a time decades ago when dental school didn't cost that much. There weren't any PPOs stealing half your production, and so their CEO can fly around in their own jet. There was no HIPAA police hunting you down like in the Matrix, like their Agent Smith. There were no venture capital firms back then buying up practices and conglomerating them into these giant Frankenstein monster DSOs. Basically, everything was really nice. It was wonderful to be practicing in the golden age of dentistry until you actually needed to do some dentistry. And then, in retrospect, it wasn't so great. You wanted to take an X-ray, or you wanted to send a patient to a specialist or take a photograph, and your office looked kind of like this. And this might be a little bit of an exaggeration. I mean, maybe it didn't look exactly like this, but in this picture, you'll see an office that has no screens. No computers, no keyboards, no tablets. If there was a mouse in your office, you called an exterminator. That X-ray that you need, because you're doing an endo, took 10 minutes to develop, 8 to 10 minutes. And if you missed the apex, it was another 8 to 10. If you wanted to copy these, transmit them anywhere, if you wanted to send them to a specialist, if you wanted to share them with a patient, that information was almost lost if it was sitting in a paper chart. Okay, and information loss is a real problem for us because it means that stuff that we should know, we don't. And although we could do pretty good dentistry on a minute-to-minute basis, keeping track of things, it was something we weren't that great at back then. Because, I mean, if you think about now, it happens slowly over time, but the information that we need to manage now, your patient demographics, clinical records and treatment plans, uh, credit cards, insurance information, patients' medical histories, and on and on and on. Radiographs, CT scans, photographs. If you're doing scans for your for restorative dentistry, all of that is stored in a computer somewhere now. Okay. And like I said, I'm going to say it again, it's the crown jewels of your practice. Because if you walked into your office and you have all this on a server in your office and that server was gone, or it had been hacked, or it had been, God forbid, there was a natural disaster and that stuff is gone and not backed up properly, it's irreplaceable. And you probably have a lot of it, if you're like most dentists, on a server in a closet or under your desk somewhere. In my second 10 years in dentistry, we were really moving things into servers in our office as more of things got computerized. We really started computerizing in dentistry just the business and financial side of the practices. Computers in the operatories didn't come until later with digital x-rays and scanners, intraoral cameras, things like that. But the redundancy and the backup of this was actually one of my first server setups. It was in a closet. But I was responsible for backing this up and making sure it was properly backed up. And so was my IT company. I have a good IT company, but they're still limited in their resources. And I'm only one small practice. Most of us who still practice this way don't think of the server as a major weakness, but it is. Okay. For most of us, it is. Several major compromises, breaches, hacks of dental practices. There have been a couple of major incidences that came literally through the server, through the IT company that was compromised. In other words, the dentist didn't do anything wrong, but the IT company being compromised gave access to the dentist's server, and everything was either compromised by ransomware or stolen, or it was a breach in some way that had to be reported as a HIPAA violation. A lot of this is through remote access, which many of you use to get into your computers after hours, but there are better ways. Okay, there is a revolution in technology that's going on right now because not only of the amount of information we have to deal with, but the importance of having it right where we need it when we need it. We need access to the information. We need it at our desks, iPads, kiosks we have in our practices now. This is my scanner. I have a cart that rolls around. It's connected to the rest of my office through a wireless connection, even on our phones. Okay, this is what I have on my phone now. On the left is my schedule. In the middle is clinical notes and imaging. On the right is communications with a patient if I need to text them something. I have access to that anywhere. If I'm walking down the street and I get a call from a patient who has an appointment halfway through the day and they forgot to get their pre-medication and they're going to have to cancel the appointment. Between 7th Avenue and 6th Avenue, walking down the street in Manhattan, I can get that prescription to that patient so they can go pick it up and still make their appointment. That's the opposite of information loss. That's the information being where it needs to be. Okay. So this information transformation I'm talking about, there are a couple of technologies that are related to each other. The first is what's called broadly artificial intelligence. And the best part about both of these types of technology, cloud-based operations as well, is that you're already using them. You may not be using them in dentistry, but if you're using Gmail, if you're using Siri, if you're using Google's AI assistant, or any of a number of other, you are using them in very important elements of your own personal life. But sometimes we hesitate to use them because we don't fully understand them when we're practicing dentistry. So the cloud really just refers to services and software that you access online through a browser, where the software and the data is not in your office, not under your physical control. You're connecting to it through the internet. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, is a broad classification of tools used to organize and filter and prioritize information so you have the right bits of information where you need it, when you need it. It also changes it into a form that you can use. We'll look at some AI imaging features in radiology. The same radiograph marked up through an AI program is much more usable, much more quickly, even though the information is essentially the same. Basically, artificial intelligence allows computer systems to simulate problem solving that people do. Okay, it's a very broad classification of software, and it is beginning to make its way into medicine now in a much, much larger way. Because a human being can never fully analyze an image or a paragraph of text, in the way that a machine can, because machines don't get tired, they don't get lazy, they don't get distracted, they don't have fights with their spouse that distract them. Computers always do it the same way every single time. A properly trained algorithm can do that in a way that a human can't do it. Subsets of AI that are useful for us, one of them is natural language processing, which is basically if you use Siri or Google's Assistant or anything that recognizes your voice, it's been trained on an algorithm with many, many human conversations, and it's going to approximate what you would want if a human were sort of fully interpreting that information. And it's become extremely accurate. It's easy to train. And is it perfect? No. Pardon me. Definitely not perfect. So you can't take everything it says without checking it, but it's a tremendous workload reducer. I like reducing the workload. There's a lot of work in dentistry. Generative AI is another step beyond natural language processing, where it's using these practice sessions and all of this massive amount of data that's trained on to generate new content. And in dentistry, I use that primarily to turn a whole bunch of patient interaction material into a cohesive note, into a treatment note. It's extremely accurate, time saver for me. And when I look at these notes afterwards, they always contain things that I probably would have missed if I was just scribbling them down on a piece of paper the way I used to, or even if I was typing while I was talking to the patient. And I don't like typing while I'm talking to a patient, because I like looking at people when I'm talking to them. And the more time I can spend looking at the person and less at the screen, the happier I am. And I think the better my patient feels like they're being cared for. The computer vision, now we're getting into what's really helpful with radiology. It's not new to dentistry. You use Face ID to unlock your phone, and that is basically an AI interpreter that's been trained on a picture of your face and can pick it out of a crowd of other faces, even ones that look very similar to yours. It's amazing, really. The radiology, I want to emphasize that when people look at these radiographic interpreters like Pearl, and they're kind of put off in this, well, I could do that. I mean, I could see the disease there. I could do that. It's not doing anything I can't do. I would agree, because the way these are trained is by showing them hundreds of thousands of images and showing them how they're interpreted by humans, and they learn from our experience. So you could do that, but the computer's faster and it's more accurate. Between caries, anatomical segmentation of different parts of the teeth, calculus detection, we're going to go through a few other things. It saves me time. Yeah, I have to check it. I can't just see a mark on the screen and say, oh yeah, that's what it is. But it's a tremendous lowering of my workload. For example, here. So here's an X-ray on the left, and I look at that quickly and I say, oh, like, look at this, tons of calculus. This person has perio. Oh my God, number 30. That's a real disaster. You get focused on that. Many of us, and you might not think you will, but I'll go out on a limb and I'll say I will miss the caries on the mesial of number 3, because there's too much information noise in this picture, and the information gets lost in that way. Okay. Basic things that I'm doing with this now to save time and to make treatment more effective. The first, of course, is caries detection. Caries is just different shades of gray in a different pattern on the radiograph. Machines are great at picking that up. They pick up things all the time that are significant and very minor, even things that don't need to be treated. Very early decalcifications that I would never notice can be noted there and stored there. That image, I can look at it later and see if something has progressed. It's really amazing. Measuring bone levels for perio, the absolute measurement obviously is all subject to variability because of the angulation of the x-ray, but you look at the same image over time. And with Pearl, we can do this. We look at the same image or the same view over time, and you can see progression of disease or lack of progression of disease. Calculus is notoriously difficult to see on x-rays. Big calculus is easy. Little ones often get missed, and they're very helpful to see, particularly when my hygienist is doing a quadrant or root planing. This view up on the screen, very helpful for her. Is it going to make a night and day difference? No, but it's going to make sure that she's not losing track of an area that she should really be paying attention to. Periapical areas also tailor-made for AI because they really are just varying shades of gray in certain patterns that can be trained, very easily trained. I talk about workload reduction. I look at this picture and I say, wow, look at that giant perio lesion on the mesula number 2 and this big carious lesion on 4. Wow, and I'm going to treatment planning already, and a lot of times I would miss this sizable carious lesion on the mesula 2. I didn't notice in this picture. You go back and look at it now and you see it, distracted like you were before, you might not. So I keep using the term workload reduction because I feel like I work too hard. You probably do also. I want to work at things that I need to be engaged in, okay? And not waste my energy scrutinizing something that could easily be interpreted for me by a computer, okay? When I have a hygiene check, if you're a general dentist and you have a hygiene check, you go in there and you have 3 to 5 minutes with that patient, maybe. I want to spend as much of that time looking at the person and as little time as possible looking at the screen. This lets me do that. Even if I want to find the same stuff, the fact that it was screened quickly with one click of the mouse reduces the amount of time I have to focus. Now, as far as security, even if you're not going to store your radiographs and other images in the cloud yet, one day you will. It's inevitable. You start with a service like one of the AI interpreters, certainly like Pearl, which is what I use. That all happens in the cloud, okay? Because the processing power to do this AI stuff, you don't have that kind of power on the machines in your office. So it all goes through the cloud, which means they keep an entire backup database of all of your images. So if your backup fails, if you lose your images and you're using a service like Pearl, up in the cloud is where all of your stuff is, still safe. That's like, an extra seatbelt on you. And even at the very beginning, they don't publicize this. I think, frankly, I think the Pearl people should talk about this a little bit more because it's a pretty good feature. But as soon as I saw this, I said, wow. And I was already paying like a couple $100 a month for a different service to back up all my images. And then I didn't have to anymore. It was included. It's kind of cool. So about this cloud thing, it mystifies a lot of people, even though we use it all the time. Instead of software running on our computer, it's running on somebody else's computer, and we're connecting to it through the internet. Whether you still have any DVDs in your house or whether you watch everything on Netflix, same principle. Instead of having a player and a DVD in your house, you stream the service. It's very much like streaming practice management services, imaging services over the internet. And it's got some advantages and disadvantages. Everything does. The advantage is the much simpler hardware requirements. Any machine that can connect to the internet can take advantage of this. You don't have to worry about whether your machine is powerful enough. If it can connect to the internet and can stream an image and your internet connection is fast enough, then you can do anything on that you could do if it was in your office. Updates, you don't have to worry about updating your software. Risk partnering, we're going to talk about risk a little bit later. You have basically somebody else responsible for protecting that information and document that is being responsible for protecting that information. Even better, because dentists are very, frugal, I'll say. I'm one of them. Most of these things are lower in cost than a comparable service or program that you're maintaining on your own computer in your office. Disadvantages, there can be some. If you're in an area where the internet service is spotty or not that fast, these things can be a little bit flaky. That's really happening much less now that high-speed internet is available everywhere. Vendor issues, smaller companies will come and go, but established, stable companies, I only work with established and stable companies. really don't have that same kind of vendor risk that other things do. So I'll define it as just the on-demand delivery of IT resources and data, basically from someplace else. And maybe it's because it's called the cloud that we want. The cloud, what is it? It's like a wispy kind of thing, but it's not. I'm going to solve the mystery for you, really. That cloud, all it is somebody else's computer, someplace else. Usually a better computer, managed by people who are better at protecting computers than you or I. It doesn't mean you can't do it yourself, but I have found that the risks are much less when a good and well-organized and well-documented set of software tools is managed via the cloud over the internet. I mean, in your own personal life now, if you need to find an email from 5 years ago, you can go to Gmail and it's there. That's in the cloud. You know, you checking your investments, you want to see if that trade was done on time or anything like that. All of that information is stored from your standpoint in the cloud. So that's important stuff. So there is no reason that we can't use this in dentistry as well, even though we tend to feel, you know, weird about it, about not having that stuff on a server in our office. But the problem in our closets, and I'm going to include a picture of mine, is that that is much more vulnerable than you think it is nowadays. The risk of hackers, ransomware, malware, those things are much harder to control than they used to be. It's very difficult to secure your system completely, even if you have a good backup. We have feelings about these things, a feeling about what's safe and what's not. Like you walk down the street and one alley is very dark and one is well lit. You're going to go down the well lit one because it just seems safer, and it is. But there are things that seem safe in IT that aren't really. And the nearest example with the server I can give is that during the Depression, when people lost all of their money because the banks failed, right? Shortly after that, there were a number of people after the Depression who kept large amounts of money in their houses, under the floorboards, in the freezer, because it felt safer, right? Was it safer? No, it wasn't safer, because under the floorboards in your freezer, obviously your house could be robbed, your house can burn down, a lot of things can happen to that. And in a bank, it's much safer. We have the same perception a lot of the time with cloud-based stuff. And I encourage you to think about it that way. You know, if you're, because when I talk to groups of dentists and I ask who would be, you know, leery about having their practice and patient data stored in a cloud-based provider off-site. And usually most of the hands go up. And so I get it. I do. But when you think about what's connected to your server, IT company, patient contact manager if you're sending out text, if you're using a voice over IP phone system like I am, if you have any remote staff, or if any of you log into your server from off-site, it's a major conduit for malware and bad things to get into your computer. Well documented, it happens all the time. Your accountant, your marketing people, they can get in there. It's a lot of connections to that, okay? And backing up, I'm not going to do a whole thing on backing up, but I will tell you that during Hurricane Sandy here in New York, we at the New York State Dental Association were trying to help a number of dentists restore their drowned offices. There were a number of people who had backups that didn't work, or that didn't work completely because they hadn't been checked. If you have a backup of your own stuff and your IT person says, yep, no problem, you have to have them restore that backup onto another computer and be certain that it works. If you haven't done that, call them up and get them to do it, because that's the only way. You can't look at a list of files and say, oh yeah, definitely, it's fine. You have to restore it from a backup. It's not something I worry about now because my stuff is cloud-based, but it's very important. Otherwise, you might not have a backup. You might just think you do. So this arrangement that we see, all the things connected to your server when you move to the cloud kind of moves into a different sort of realm. So I still have a server because I share information throughout the office. It's connected, though, to the cloud through a secure connection. And up there are things like Pearl and Curve, which are the main imaging and practice management facilities I use. Dr. First is a company that I do electronic prescribing. Mango is my phone system because all my phones go through the internet. And when people say to me also, well, what if the internet goes out? That's another objection to cloud-based computing and cloud-based, which I understand. Things like Perl, Curve, Mango, what if you have an internet? What if the internet fails and you don't have it? My answer to that is, if the internet goes out, you're going to have a lot more problems than just your practice management software. When you have no internet, you can't process credit cards. You can't send in insurance claims. You can't you can't send text messages and reminders to pay. There's a ton of stuff that you can't do. Okay. So the notion that if you have everything in-house, but the internet fails, you're still going to be fine is a little suspect. It's just something to think about. Okay. So we want to be logical about this stuff. The goal for me is something I like to call zero information loss. It's kind of a fantasy I have about everything that I need to know. Like a patient calls up the front desk, has a conversation. Somewhere in that conversation is something about that they don't like mint, or that, we want to make sure we don't use mint. And I want that piece of information in a note to be accessible everywhere. So everybody knows it. My hygienist knows it, my assistant knows it, I know it. Multiply that times the number of different pieces of information that we need. That's what we're approaching, okay? And it's not only that we can do this through cloud-based practice management, but it's a major helpful tool. In my practice now, so this is just some of the things that I do. My patients give me all their information either on a kiosk or an iPad in my office, or they do it online through a secure portal. That information goes right into their database entry. In other words, when I look at a patient's medical history, it's not from a crumpled piece of paper that got stored somewhere and then my front desk person had to just retype it and hopefully they got it right. It's the actual information from the patient going into there, okay? And on the patient's entry, you will see that I have this person that has an allergy to some animals. They have an autoimmune issue, bronchitis, type 1 diabetes. They're taking Lipitor, they're taking insulin. That's directly from them. And that's going to stay there unless they change it. Okay. Freeform information, even things that are not picked off a list elsewhere, all of that information is there as well. So what it is really is a way of thinking about this stuff as not being, my job to kind of shepherd that information around. Okay. And so an example of zero information loss, is how I think about these things. And by the way, things like artificial intelligence interpretation of images it's very shortly will not be only limited to radiographs. Things like microscopic slides, pathology slides, oral pathology images of lesions in the mouth. That is all, it's getting close. Okay, we're not there yet, but in the practice lifetime of most of the people watching this now, that will absolutely be a thing that will be available. Okay. And again, the accessibility, I bring this up again because look at over here, I have somebody with a tongue lesion that needs to be biopsied. There's a saying, when you're in driver's ed, speed kills, but speed doesn't kill in pathology, in things that are serious like this. Delay does. And we have patients who will avoid getting done what they need to get done unless we make it so smooth and easy for them that they can just flow right into treatment. This is a very functional thing to be able to do this. This is the way that we should be able to communicate with our patients. It's in the patient's interest not to lose that information. So today I'm with a patient and we see a lesion. It could be something in the mouth. It could, obviously it's the mouth. It could be something on the tongue. It could be something that needs treatment. Maybe they need endo, they need periosurgery, whatever it is. But I identify a suspicious lesion, say we'll take a photograph, a radiograph of it, and it'll be analyzed immediately. And I'll be able to see, is that something we need to do something about? Or is it something that I'm not quite as worried about? Okay. Photos I can share with a specialist now. I do this in my office right now. I have at least 2 of the 5 specialists that I work with on a regular basis have a direct access into one to their practice management system, one directly to them, where I can send an image and say, hey, can we chat about this? And usually within 5 or 10 minutes, I can have communication with them about what they think about it. Very helpful. Right then and there, I can schedule a patient for treatment. If I'm going to do something about this, I can schedule it right there and there. If the specialist is going to, we can do that in the treatment room. Clinical note, very important. I use an artificial intelligence interpreter for almost everything I do. I have a little microphone. I explain it to the patients. We don't record your conversations. It's directly interpreted by a computer that helps me not miss information when I write my note. And I have no need for the patient to think I'm infallible. I have not found that people are thinking, oh, you can't just you need a computer to help you do that. No, what I find generally is that people are really happy that I'm trying to be so thorough as not to miss anything. Because in medicine now, in dentistry, certainly, everybody's in a hurry. You know, we're under a lot of pressure. We're under a lot of efficiency pressure. You know, if you're practicing in network, you got to deal with insurance stuff. You know, you have to not waste time because time is money. And it is also patient care and patient wellness. So when you hand a patient a referral slip and say, okay, call this person, how often do they go? Not often as you think they do. When it gets managed right there in the treatment room, it does. Okay. Right. And the last thing I have to do, I still have to see my next patient. Okay. So all this stuff that has to happen to get this person the care that they need, it can't screw up my schedule. I still have other people I got to take care of, and that's what I'm going to do. Now, with all of this stuff, this is usually when I get started getting questions about the elephant in the room. And my joke about it is not really an elephant, it's a HIPAA. That's HIPAA the hippo. No, by the way, I can do this on a webinar or live because I never hear anybody laugh at that joke, but I still like it, so I'm going to keep telling it. There are a lot of things we have to comply with that are beyond the scope of this course. I'm just going to talk about a couple of them. HIPAA is a term I coined for a mental illness that we have in our profession, which is this fear of doing anything with people's information, even if it helps them because of some HIPAA problem. You have to be very specific, and you have to understand what HIPAA is and what it's not. It's not really meant to inhibit treatment. It's meant to get patients the things that they need safely, okay? So we shouldn't have an irrational fear of communicating with a patient. Any of these things that you're going to use need to be in your risk assessment. Very quickly, we're wrapping this up. We're coming to the end of some of this stuff, but this is my image for a risk assessment. And you probably have one written down on a dusty book in your office someplace. But if the Office of Civil Rights from HHS is what we call the HIPAA police ever comes knocking on your door, the first thing they're going to ask for is a risk assessment. It's like when a police officer says to you, license and registration. And if you say to them, gee, I forgot where I keep that, then you got a problem because they're all of a sudden really keyed into why does this person not have a license and registration? So your risk assessment, if you haven't looked at it in a while, anything that you have that's cloud-based, AI-based, these things should be included in it as things that are places where patients' information can be stored and shared. Business associate agreements you have to have. Okay, so there's a ton of companies. Curve and Pearl are the ones we're thinking about today. Here are some of the others, companies that I work with that have online access to my information. I have a business associate agreement, which is a piece of paper saying they've agreed to comply with HIPAA, protect the information, and to notify me if anything goes wrong. That covers me against an awful lot of problems. So if you're involving yourself with a cloud-based company or a company that does AI stuff, and they don't offer you a business associate agreement, or if you ask for one and they say, oh, you don't really need that, I'd be pretty dubious, okay? Because when these people come knocking on your door, the HIPAA police, I think of them as Agent Smith, you know, in the Matrix. And even though they're not really, I've met these people. They're just doing their job. They want to make sure that people are kept safe, that information is secured, and not only protected, but also given out where and when it needs. The most common HIPAA violation, by the way, I'm going to leave you with this thought. The most common HIPAA violation in 2023 through current is failure to share patients' information properly when they request it. They ask for a copy of their records, they ask for something to be sent to another doctor, and we don't do it, or we don't do it in a timely fashion. That's actually the most common thing that people complain about. Okay, so this aspect of artificial intelligence and cloud-based computing as things that provide smoother access to information getting where it should be is actually not as much a security risk as a security benefit if you're careful in using it properly. There's a lot more to this subject. I've tried to touch on the basic points, but we're almost done here. I do want to leave some time to take some questions, because usually there are a number of questions. Some of them, always with these, there are some questions that are very similar from one group to the next, and some that I've never heard before, which is great, because that always helps me improve this course and make it better in the future. I really do want to, once again, pass my thanks on to Pearl and to Curve for sponsoring this, because I think it's important to do it. There's a ton of wonderful stuff coming at us in dentistry. We just have to be able to evaluate it properly. If anybody has anything they want to ask me beyond this, email me. That's my email address, mitchell@studio57dental.com. I get a lot of emails from a lot of people, and I am happy to answer them because I also learn from people who ask me questions. So that being said, I am going to let Sheela and the Pearl and the Curve people take back control of this webinar and start getting some questions organized so we can answer them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rubinstein. I will share my screen here in just a moment. We are
Sure.
getting so many wonderful comments. Sounds like everybody's very appreciative of what you're sharing with us today. Something we really need to be mindful of, and ways that you've shown us to find resources to be able to take those steps in the right direction, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that this is not a headache we have to tackle at any time. So thank you for all of that. Those of you moving into thoughts about cloud dentistry, as well as AI in general, we would love to answer those questions for you. I do want to share my screen, and then also Hailey's going to jump on here in just a moment. And let me just get this started. We would encourage you to put your questions in the chat. I'm seeing some come in, and we're going to be able to address those. A lot of people have questions about these HIPAA things you were talking about. And just as a quick reminder, inside of having all of these things HIPAA compliant, it's also mindful to be thinking of how can we start using different products in the market, like AI, right? Having the ability to show the image that Dr. Rubinstein was talking about is really fascinating for a clinician to be able to have that second set of eyes, similar to spell check, right? We all know how to write, we all know how to diagnose, but to have a little red line or a red dot remind you, can you take a closer look here, like number 3, especially when that patient comes in for number 30, right? And we're talking about focusing on possibly a crown or something, but an extra set of eyes that doesn't get tired, doesn't have diagnosis fatigue is nice. And the important part here, I think, as a clinician myself, is to be able to turn that to our patient. There are 2 very significant things that happen. Number 1, they are starting to understand those areas that are no longer shades of gray, right? And they can accept dentistry more often. And then the second one is, this was an interesting silver lining when I was using Pearl, which is I used to stand there and stare at my radiograph. And we know that 64% of patients have no idea what they're actually looking at, but I still did that. But when I used AI, I was able to then present the dentistry a little bit quicker. Like, this area is light pink, it's not moved into the enamel. This area is dark pink, it's moved past the enamel. We want to take care of that. That bought back so much time for me as a presenter to be able to open up the remaining time for my patient. They were asking more questions because they were more informed. Now, second opinion is one of our features. We have 2 additional features that help with practice management and insurance verification. But what I do want to let your team know today, that you guys that are here, is there's a couple things. We love second opinion. And I love even more that you can have it inside of Curve because it's a seamless integration. So there's no workflow change. And that's really what makes this 100% utilization. You're able to take your imaging just like you do, use your sensors just like you do, review and show patients x-rays, but you have this nice little button right in the middle where you click the button and you're able to bring this directly into your imaging system and have the AI overlay within seconds. So that's really exciting when we were able to integrate with our partners and move into that seamless integration, right? Pro Second Opinion is available for multiple imaging system and again works in seconds, but also having it inside of your imaging system is a huge win. So I will invite you to have a demo for your team. You know, sit down, invite your team, have your clinical team and your front desk team thinking about how do we use these images? Can we use them for case presentation? Can we use them for claim submission? And also thinking about the environment of moving to cloud, right? So I encourage you to scan one of these or both of these, hopefully, have that time with your practices. And I know Hailey wanted to jump in as well and give us some more information about Curve, but feel free to, again, we'll be back in just a second for some questions. We want to make sure that I'm seeing these questions pop up quite a bit here, and we want to make sure we get to Dr. Rubinstein. So Hailey, go ahead, take it away for us.
Of course. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And thank you, Dr. Rubinstein. You brought up a lot of great points that Pearl and we also, as our partnership, does resolve for a lot of practices we talk to. So each and every day practices come, I talk to them about how we can incorporate their clinics opportunities. And one of them is the cybersecurity. And because we're cloud, we can be logged in anywhere essentially. But what you're seeing right now is the user interface for what we have here at Curve. And really, I know that Dr. Rubinstein did speak about the sidekick, but to the right-hand side, it gives you information quickly without having to memorize any icons. So it's user-friendly too for adaptability in your practice. Now, not only do we have, your basic practice management system, we also have patient engagement included, where you have two-way texting. You have that free ability to go back and forth with your patients. They can even send you images and directly send it straight to their files and letters. You can have campaign messages that go automatically out to a patient to remind them. And even when the patient confirms through that message, it will actually go back to the schedule instantly. Not only are we doing patient engagement, but alongside that is the patient of today wanting to schedule and book online or at least request. But as practices do know, we want control. So having controlled systems is really giving parameters around patients and what they schedule and how. So then your team is met with exactly like this appointment, an outlined appointment to know that this needs to be verified and giving that patient experience a long time with your cybersecurity and safety around that. Now, on top of the patient engagement, we also have easy charting. So the charting and AI imaging is all included here, where I know that Sheila showed you, we have the images where once they're ready, we can actually load it for that second opinion, and then you can present it to a patient to exactly what they might be looking at and explaining it to what they know and understand it to be. More visual learners. I think we all have been visual learners our whole life, right? From seeing an apple and saying this is an apple and then memorizing that that is an apple. So the same thing with the patient. You're sitting there showing them exactly what you're speaking to instead of it being something that you're just speaking at them with. Now, on top of the imaging, we can, of course, have that charting where you have treatment plans, forms. Dr. Rubinstein did explain too about how the patient fills it out in a cloud system. Well, luckily in Curve, when a patient fills out a form, all that medical alert information populates. So like he mentioned too, if they made any adjustments to it, you are understood and it's accurate. We want it to be accurate. And then, of course, we have built out insight dashboards too for your practice. So then you can really see and deep dive into what's going on in a more roundabout way and high level. So then you can accurately, market better or even know exactly the type of treatment you might have outstanding. So really, we just have this all-in-one system. We have it to where really anyone can come in and control your day and really customize how you want your operations to be in a very secure way.
Thank you, Haley.
Mhm.
So much has changed, Dr. Rubinstein, since we started doing dentistry, right? So much easier. So,
Yeah,
so
it's amazing.
great.
Yeah, I say this, I said it, yeah, it's kind of funny. I tell people, you know, everything's changed since you graduated. And it doesn't matter whether you graduated 2 years ago or 20, it's just constantly more now than ever. And we get nervous about it, but it's also like wonderful. I mean, there's just so much that we have available to us we just didn't have before. We just, it's amazing, really.
Excellent. Yep. And Curve's done such a great job. So thankful for their partnership. I am going to invite our Director of Partner Growth, Kimberly Quisham, back on the call. She is behind the scenes making this all work, as well as monitoring the chat and making sure that the questions are delegated accordingly. So, Kimberly, go ahead and take it away. Let's see what the teams here would like to know more about.
No, perfect. And I want to say thank you, Dr. Rubinstein, because I've noticed you've jumped in and answered some of them, but there were some questions specifically around the generative speech programs,
Yes.
what you use, what the alternatives are, and then I know you answered it, but I think it's great to have it live
Sure.
in understanding of the technical side of, can you dig in a little bit to how you're making that happen?
Sure. The first thing I point out is that I do wear a little microphone on my lapel, and if a patient is experiencing it the first time, I always tell them that I'm recording the conversation, but we're not keeping a recording of it. It's just to, and if they don't want me to do it, I haven't had anybody object to it. Usually they're happy that I'm trying to be thorough. There are actually a number of things that can do this for you. What you cannot do is use something like ChatGPT or some other, because without that business associate agreement, without that agreement with a healthcare a company that does this in a HIPAA compliant way, I don't even want to go. You can't do that. So there are fortunately a number of companies that have things that do this. I've worked with a number of them. They all work pretty well. One that I worked with that was specifically dental was called Bola AI. There are ones that are specifically for medical use. One of them is Heidi, Heidi. They all work fairly similarly. They're all trainable. You do have to go and do a bunch of notes with them and then correct them afterwards, and it gets to understand your own style. But the utility is incredible because literally I'm not even narrating. It will be it'll be just hearing everything that's happening if I'm having an interaction with a new patient or somebody with an emergency. And I should have shown an example of it, but I didn't have one. After you're done with the interaction, you sit down behind your desk, you pull it up, and you tell it what kind of, you want a soap note, you want a referral letter. It takes the information that was salient in that interaction and puts it in that form. And I will tell you, it is not perfect, but it is way better than me doing the note from memory 15 minutes after the encounter with the patient. I routinely read the notes and see things in them that I would have missed, or you still have to read every word of it because AI can have weird things that it just does occasionally, but the number of corrections is getting smaller as I've been using it. So I hope that answered the question reasonably well. It's very little risk. Try it, and if you don't like it, don't use it. But I tried it thinking I wasn't going to like it, and now I can't live without it.
It's so funny when you mention that. It always makes me remember whenever I'm trying to type in my autocorrect, I'm trying to say good and it keeps correcting to food. I'm like, good grief, this is just too much. But the reality being, I would never want to remove it from my iMessaging for sure.
Absolutely.
Um, but speaking of, it's funny you used the analogy, and I just did also of spell check. There was a chat, Sheila, this one's probably going to be for you, but the cost of adding Pearl, and the doctor messaged it as spell checking the X-rays, which I thought
Yes,
was cute.
I like that too. Yeah. Sheila, you can take that one.
Sure. Yeah. So right now with second opinion, we're starting roughly on our standalone product around 349. So encourage you again to book those demos. There's always specials, and I'll also let Haley chime in as well.
Yeah. please do book the demos. You would be able to see the integration for sure. And then we would actually give you a full quote breakdown specific for your needs at your clinic too during that time.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. There was a question in the chat that I think gets into detail, but Dr. Rubinstein, I'd be curious about your thoughts. The question refers to using a backup locally and in the cloud. What are your versions, and like what are some watchouts that anyone would need to be aware of if they're using this sort of hybrid approach to backing up? What do you recommend, or what insights can you provide there?
Yeah. Basically, what I recommend is that whatever it is, you need to test it and make sure that it works, because anything can fail. And it was interesting when we had this issue with Hurricane Sandy that we went through. It wasn't just people who didn't have an appropriate backup, but it was some people's backup wasn't formatted properly. The IT people hadn't accounted for everything, and they didn't work. What I do is I now have all of the main sources of information are basically in Perl and in Curve and one or two other databases. They're all based in the cloud now. I don't have a local backup of any of it, okay, which is a little scary at first. For maybe the first 6 months, I maintained a local backup on my own disk on my server in the office. All of the stuff is downloadable. Curve, for example, I mean, at any point you want a copy of everything, you can download it and you can save it somewhere in a closet if that makes you happy and it makes you feel better. Some people do. So that's possible. But I no longer have, I had a hybrid system for a while where I had my own backup and then I had a cloud-based backup service. That service I got rid of because the companies I'm working with now all have it built into their functionality. But I have no problem with anybody who wants to keep, in addition, their own local backup. Just make sure that it's encrypted and protected, because when you have it, you have to protect it. Okay? Because if somebody walks off with your computer and it wasn't encrypted, guess what? All of your information is now in the public domain. It's a breach. You have to report it. That can't happen if you don't have it in your office, which is why I don't have it in my office anymore. I'm trusting it to people who I believe are way better at taking care of it than me. I'm good at fixing teeth. I'm good at taking care of people. I mean, I'm very confident in those things. Shepherding information around the internet it's not my core competence, and it's never going to be. So that's why I've stopped doing it.
Sorry, it took me a second to get my thank you very, very much. It took me a second to get my mute off. There were a couple of people who raised their hands, but it's really best if you do have a quick question, can you just plop it into the chat or the chat box? I've seen them come up. Otherwise, Sheila, I know we're right at time, so I'll hand this back over to you unless a couple come in right now. I'll keep my eye on it.
Excellent. Well, I just wanted to really thank everyone for joining us. We have ongoing webinars at Pearl each week, and we hope you'll join us again. Dr. Rubinstein, thank you so much for your knowledge and spending time with us.
My pleasure.
Really
Really my pleasure. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing it.
Thank you for being here. And our partners, really thankful to have you. Hailey, thanks for joining me.
Of course.
And we do look forward to having all of you back on our webinars. Feel free to check out our website. Kimberly, I will thank you again for helping us. And if there are no other questions, we will see you soon. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great day and a great weekend.